Meeting of the Person County Board of Commissioners to order at this time and recognize that we do have a quorum. I will lead us in an invocation, after which I'll ask Commissioner Gentry if she would to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand and join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we give you credit for the opportunity for us to assemble here today to conduct the business of this county and pray that our decisions will be right for all the citizenship and we can make progress in our county. Thank you for the many who are in foreign lands fighting today to protect the freedom that we have and enjoy here today. Pray your blessings on them, their safety and their return home. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, discussion and adjustment and approval of the agenda. Maybe a change there. We'd like to make a little change. We had originally scheduled to give Heidi her going away wording, but we want to move that up front a little bit. We've got former Commissioner Jimmy Clayton here and Representative Larry Yarber. They would like to speak. So this time we will actually honor our outgoing county manager. And we bought new chairs for these seats up here, trying to coax her not to go. But we told her as well, you can't take the chair. You know, the option is to stay here and you'll be okay. But we do want to honor Heidi, and what do you have a little plaque here that I like to present to her. And also we hear from these two gentlemen that are here as well. I don't know which way you want to do this. You gentlemen, why don't you come and speak and then we'll do the plaque presentation.
I don't have anything prepared, but I am honored to be up here and thank Heidi for all these years of service. I was on the board when we were interviewing and hiring the new county manager. And I remember at that time, most of the candidates were on their way out the door, headed toward their retirement. And this would be their last stop. Mrs. York was on her way up. And at that time, the chairman, Johnny Merle Lunsford, said that we really, we won't have her for very long. We'd be lucky to get 2 years out of her, and then she's going to a bigger county. And I agreed. I was like, yep. I said, we are going to just catch her on her way up. On the other hand, we may as well get 2 good years out of her and then do this again. And of course, she proved me wrong. And 14 years.
Yeah.
Well, and I can just say that the people of Person County have been blessed to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Well, I was on the board at the time as well when we were doing the interviews, and we had a lot of people that I thought were trying to finish their time in Person County, and we did interviews with, and it was sort of like Larry said, we caught one on the way up. And the fact that Heidi stayed here for 14 years, I think says a lot, because most time managers don't stay that long and they move somewhere else. And I know she got offers from other counties at different times. And I've always considered Person County just one step ahead of a lot of the rural counties. We did things different up here in Person County. And we had to stay ahead of the curve with Durham and Orange right on our butt over there trying to pay more and get people away. And Heidi stayed with us. She did a good job. When we interviewed her, she looked like a little girl to me then. She still looks pretty, well, everybody looks young to me now, so. But you do look very young, and I think you got a bright future in front of you. And we appreciate what all you've done for Person County. I talked to Mr. Johnny Lunsford, and I don't think he's here, but he said if he felt like it this morning, he was gonna come, but if he was not here to tell you that he enjoyed working with you and that he thought you did a really great job as a county manager. So I'm conveying that. If he walks in the door, he can do it again. And I guess that since I'm not an elected official anymore, I'm supposed to shut up and sit down. If I was an elected official, I guess I get to talk long. But thank you for your service to Person County, and thank this board for keeping her, because I have seen boards change and fire the manager the first thing they do, and most of the time it's a big mistake because they don't understand how things work when they've got an experienced manager that they have to start looking for one. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I do have this plaque here, which is very short and sweet, but to the point. And I'd like to present this, and I'll just do it here and then hand it to Heidi. But it says, presented to Heidi York in appreciation of 14 years of service, Person County Manager, July 21st, 2008 to June 21st, 2022. To the citizens of Person County, presented June 20th, 2022. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
I think it would be appropriate if the two former commissioners could join you with another picture, since they were part of the two that hired her.
That's good. Yeah. Ready for one. At one other get together, I'd said a few things about Heidi and her service to Person County. I don't want to be redundant, but words aren't sufficient to express our gratitude to Heidi and what she has meant to Person County, the leadership here in Person County. And she was always receptive, open door policy, answered phone calls, texts, emails, and promptly. She didn't put it off until the next day, even if it was past the normal working hours and maybe even on the weekend. She was always responsive to my request, and I'm sure others as well. And that's a trait that's going to be difficult to fill. Some people don't have that mindset. They don't have that work ethic, but she does and has done a great deal for Person County, and she will be sorely missed. And our policy would be, we have an open door policy if you want to come back. But again, congratulations and best wishes in the future.
Can I say a couple words?
Sure, please do.
Thank you all so very much for the recognition. It has really been a pleasure to serve the community of Person County. I have loved living here. My kids love being in school here. Thank you to the board for taking a chance on me 14 years ago as a new manager. That was a risk for them, and I'm really pleased that they were willing to step outside of the norm and hire somebody who looked very different than the rest of the county managers looked at that time. I have a great team here, so the success that I have been able to have over the last 14 years is really due to them. So my gratitude to the Person County government employees. They have been fantastic to work with. And thank you for keeping me and allowing me to serve the board and the community of Person County. Really enjoyed it, and I am going to miss you, and I'm not too far down the road. If anybody needs anything, happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is discussion, adjustment, and approval of the agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We recommend that the board add an agenda item. And it would be after item 10, new item 11, to authorize acquisition of real property.
Any other adjustments or corrections? We have a motion to approve the agenda with the addition.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the additional item.
Motion on the floor. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carried. At this point in our commissioners' meeting, we do have a 10-minute public comment period set aside for public comment, and that's 10 minutes. And Madam Clerk, do
Yes,
we
so
have,
we do have one individual, so it'll be a 10-minute time limit today for Ms. Holly Ann Rogers of Younger Road, Roxborough.
Thank you very much for your time. I
Morning.
promise not to take the whole 10 minutes. I'm wearing black today in mourning of all of the innocent victims of gun violence in our country, all of the innocent victims of gun violence in our state, and all of the innocent victims of gun violence right here in Person County. This is a national crisis that may seem too big to tackle at the local level, but I believe starting at the local level is the only way to effectively address gun violence. You have the power to make decisions about adding mental health care workers to our health department, about building recreation facilities across our county, about funding mental health awareness training for our law enforcement officers. You have the power to make a difference on gun violence. I implore you all to do everything within your power to prevent future tragedies. Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to address this body. And thank you, Ms. York, for your stellar service to this county. Thank you.
thank you. Next on the agenda is item number 1. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mr. Chairman, would like
Yes.
to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written, please.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as printed. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. New business, item number 2, Old Helena School reuse concept. Mr. Philip Jackson.
Good morning
Good
to
morning.
everyone. And I am sorry to see you go,
Thank you, sir.
County Manager. God bless you guys. Where do I start? I want to take time out. First of all, we have a slideshow that while Ms. Reeves is bringing that up to talk about poverty. The name of our organization is the Christian Coalition to End Poverty Now. I've been deemed as the president of it. I don't know how that happened, but I'm here. I was just a little bit about me. I was born into poverty and lived in poverty for quite a few years. I have to share that about myself. As a young child growing up, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. And because of the environment I was in, I ended up in gangs. And at a very young age, I carried pistols in my pocket. 11 years old, I had a pistol in my pocket, 12, 13. At 13 years of age, I ended up with a criminal record, amazingly, just being part of the environment I was in. I'm not proud of it by any stretch of the imagination. At 17, I decided to sign up for delayed entry in the United States Marine Corps, where I entered in at 18 on July 23rd, I'll never forget it, 1983.
I was able to serve 8 years in the United States Marine Corps and end up leave there with honorable discharge. So my life has really taken a turn since then. I was able to go travel the world and serve and see a lot of different things. Landed in North Carolina as a part of my last duty station and decided that this was the place I wanted to make a life for myself and eventually start my family. A lot of successes in the corporate world, a lot of successes. So my life as a child living in poverty and the life I got to know as a young man at 26 years old, making $100,000 a year back in the mid-90s was a pretty far swing. And then I got saved. And I thought I was just going to live my life to serve myself and do my thing and raise my kids, and that was it. But God had another plan. And this is part of that plan, being connected with this coalition. As you see on the first slide of this, the text says in John 10:10 says, the thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy, but I've come that they may have life, that they may have it more abundantly. Now, Jesus is talking about everybody. He's not excluding anybody. He wants everybody to live an empowered life. We know right here in Person County that that's not the case. There are many people here in Person County that are living in poverty, and a lot of it's generational poverty, which is what I was a part of. And I don't want to take a text and preach, because that's not the environment for it, but the preacher, is struggling to get out. It's our intent, to really help and uplift our community, those in our community who are struggling, who are suffering, and they're living in poverty, not because they chose to, but because they were born into it and they don't have a choice. It's something about being born into a situation and not having anyone to take you by the hand and guide you out of it. It's not ending. It's unending. It just goes on and it goes on. They have children, and then that generation has children. That generation has children, and it's just perpetual. We believe that God is raising up this coalition to help bring people out of poverty, that they can live an empowered life. Ms. Reed. Okay, thank you. I thought this was something. All right, so our mission, the purpose of the coalition is to bring forth the concept of the kingdom of heaven in our communities through a partnership between local churches, prayer church ministries, community nonprofit organizations. So it pretty much says it all. But the kingdom of heaven, when you think about it, it's the body of Christ. It's the church. We all who name the name of Christ are part of that kingdom. And I think the way we're structured now, we look to the church and we have our organized religion, but beyond that, we're not really connected in the community working to deal with these issues that you find in impoverished situations many times. And that's what we want to do. We want to bring those forces to bear. What do we do? And it pretty much tells it all. Intake evaluation will address each person where they are and find out what their individual needs are. We'll have transitional housing. That's something to come. We're working with another partner organization that will provide that outside of the Helena property. Of course, the main purpose for the vocational Helena property is centered around the vocational training. There are other things, as you'll hear a little bit later, that we'll be using that property for. Let me back up. But it's centered around the vocational training. Contingent education. Many of the people that we serve will not have GEDs or high school diplomas or equivalency, so we want to address that. And ultimately, if they want to go further, we want to be a conduit to help them to go further with their education. If it's to connect with the community colleges and plug into some of their courses, we'd like to be part of that as well. Of course, counseling. A lot of the issues that our young people will be dealing with is due to trauma, childhood trauma and other issues. So we want to have counseling, mental health on board, Christian counseling, of course. We'll also have financial literacy programs, job placement, and ultimately the goal is to move them to permanent housing, whether they want to buy or either to rent. Have training in place to help them to be able to acquire that type of housing. Why we do what we do. You have a lot of great nonprofit organizations already here in Person County, but one of the things I learned in my 20+ years of serving in a nonprofit capacity is that we're out here doing what we can do, but we're fragmented. And because we're not communicating and we don't have the funding, we're not connected, many times we're enabling people to go from one group to the next group to the next group. So we want to bring all those groups together under one roof so that we can take a person from the time we meet them and just walk them through a process that when they leave our building, when they leave our facility, they will be empowered to go on and live a productive life. So that's the idea of bringing the coalition together. There's the Helena School property and this vocational training piece, of course, Jobs for Life. And I want to ask Rick Morgan if he would start to make his way up. He'll talk a little bit more about the Jobs for Life program. Of course, the trade school, I ran a nonprofit for 18 years full time myself. And every morning we would do a Bible study at 6 o'clock, and at 7:30, our guys would pack up a truck or trucks and we would go out and do construction projects. And I taught those guys how to do carpentry and other related skills. And I paid them while I taught them. This time we want to bring in skilled tradesmen. We want to bring in seasoned tradesmen that can transition their skill set. One of the things we're hearing throughout the building industry is that there are no workers, there are no skilled workers there, and they're desperate for skilled labor. So we want to raise up the next generation of builders through this trades program. That's the first phase. One of the other things we wanted to address is in one of those buildings, we want to set it up as a technology center and start teaching some of the entry-level skill sets that would help them move into the tech jobs. I've been talking to a lot of people that are in that industry, and they think it's possible. We're working to put a curriculum together to do that. And he's going to speak to the Jobs for Life program, but as I continue on.
Yeah, real quick. So you might want to ask the people that might be coming into the Helena School as parts of the program, where are they coming from? Are they going to be vetted or anything like that? And the answer is yes. The Jobs for Life program was started in Raleigh, North Carolina, 25 years ago by a pastor and a businessman. And it's now an international organization. They have it's an 8-week program, 16 classes. It's designed to build competence in the individual, thorough communication, have a vocational plan when they leave or when they go through the training. It's character building, teaches self-discipline. And a key component of it is that they have what's called a champion, someone to one-on-one with them throughout the whole program and then beyond. And that champion stays with that individual beyond, making sure that any barriers to employment or these other issues, housing and whatnot, are taken care of. So that's a key component in why the Jobs for Life program is so successful, is because of that champion. And we've got, we're all set up now. I've been kind of spearheading that, and that's why I'm speaking about it. Our prayer is that we would start July 25th with the first Jobs for Life program. Ed Priestip of Law Memorials agreed to have the training there. So we're excited about that. But everyone that agrees to that class, to complete the courses, they have to complete all required tasks. They have to be able to do a resume, vocational plan. They cannot miss more than 3 classes. Anything they miss, they got to make up. So it's a rigorous course that these people have to agree to hang with. So we're not just taking people off the street and, putting them through a vocational program. The Home Builders Association meetings I've had with them, some of the critical things they say, that all these programs are great, but some of these people come in, they don't even know how to be on time for work. And so that's what the Jobs for Life program addresses, is that, character building, being on time, and all that, and those type of things. That's why it's so critical that that's going to be a main part of any program that we do at the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Tom's going to speak to the culinary school and some of the other uses you see in this slide.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Morning. So on the culinary side, just a quick background of kind of who I am and why the heck I'm standing in front of you. I own a catering company down in Durham and a restaurant, and also operate a charitable organization called Love and Nourish, where we feed, so far we fed over 600,000 people, but we feed, give or take, about 1,000 or so a week now, where we provide meals for people who are homebound, homeless, that kind of thing, both on an individual and a corporate basis. And so our vision in general for the school is to have a culinary center where we can not only teach people culinary arts, and just like the building trades, we are desperate for people in our industry. I think, just going out to eat, sometimes it takes a little while longer, doesn't it? So we're trying to teach people that there is a career path in the culinary industry, both in the kitchen and out front. And then we're also interested in creating a place where people can come to the table. Christ welcomed everybody at the table. That's kind of the whole point of having a meal together. So what we'd like to do is obviously talk to the folks of Roxborough and Person County to figure out exactly what kind of environment we should have there for bringing people to the table. My vision is that people would come all walks of life. You'd be able to buy food there. You'd be able to enjoy it with your neighbors. If you have money, great. We'd love to take it. If you don't, we'll offer that meal for you for free. We also see the ability to have a community center, think more like a wedding venue or that kind of thing, where people can gather for important celebrations of their lives, for weddings, for celebrations of life, for just community celebrations. So we envision a place that is a magnet, if you will, to bring the community in, to celebrate what they're up to in their lives, and also to rehabilitate a wonderful resource that you've had in the county now for 60 years, I guess it is now, 65 years. So I'd entertain any questions or yield the floor back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, your last name for the clerk, please.
Sorry, it's Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R. Thanks.
So, thank you. I'll move on. We covered that, I think, pretty thoroughly. Currently, we're working with Pastor Clevie Brandon, if you would stand, and Minister Alliances in support of what we're doing. The group consists of a regular group of people that are praying. We've been praying every week for over 2 years now about this. It's funny because this wasn't even on the radar when we first started meeting and praying about what to do. We were talking about Just New Beginnings, which is the nonprofit that I founded back in 99. So we were just looking at how to get that back up and running in a meaningful way. And as we began to pray, the coalition is what we came up with. So we believe this is of God, and this is he's backing it. And then we have a team of 16 plus volunteers who are meeting every month to talk about ways to get this project up and running. What we're asking for is what we really hope to receive out of some of these meetings is for the community to embrace the program, the churches, the individuals, everybody who names the name of Christ to get behind it, and just really press in and see what we can do to make a difference in others' lives. Of course, the funding question is a huge question. That property's been sitting there for a while. It's not sitting for no reason. But so how do we pay for this thing? We're looking at grants. We've already started doing research to find grants to support it. We're looking at the Opportunity Zone. I believe Person County is, and that comes up under that umbrella. Crowdfunding, ongoing culinary operations, historic tax credits, lease and income like businesses. All of the nonprofits and the groups that will be housed there will pay some type of rent to help support the property. And of course, the building can be done in stages. One of the things that we were talking about recently is going ahead and getting those attached buildings, because most of those, believe it or not, amazing in the past were used for vocational training. We took the tour and they've got the 220 currents in there where they were doing the different types of skills that require that type of system. So they're somewhat operational. If we can go in there and get those up and running and start teaching the construction-based trades, ultimately we could use some of those individuals that are in the program to help do the refurbish on the big building. So the program can support itself in that regard. What we need from the commissioners. Of course, the first is the ownership agreement that allows us to take ownership of the property, except the gym, the facility, excuse me, that houses the EMD and law enforcement substation. Need all of the outbuildings and the main school. We just talked about that somewhat. And then a contingent ownership agreement that allows us the time to raise the money. And if not accomplished in the time frame that we agreed on, then the property goes back to the county with the renovations intact. Belk Architecture has kindly provided some of the rough estimates and the cost to renovate the project. They were being engaged to provide the design for the building, of course. Total will be somewhere between $6.5 to $8 million to complete the project. And as you can see there, Belk architecture firm has done a lot of projects here in Person County, the Roxborough Community School, the Pocket Park, Historic Tar Heel Chevy Company, the Hallsway, Historic Roxborough Steam Laundry. That's pretty much it. Did you have any questions for me that I can address at this point?
Chair, I have a question, if I can ask that, May. When you were talking about the ownership agreement that allows you to take ownership of the property except the gym, the facility that currently houses the EMD and law enforcement substation. There's a softball field and a track. It's located behind there. Also, goals, basketball goals. Are you planning on taking that as well?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. It's amazing. I sat there. I drove out there and I just sat not long ago and watched how the community uses that property, and we don't want to disturb that. We think it's a beautiful thing. People are there walking, jogging, doing what they do, the games that are played there. We want to see that happen. We want to be part of that community. We want to be part of this community, to add to, not take away anything from it.
And my next question is somewhere between 6.5 million, $8 million. With what you've investigated so far, do you feel like you can come up with that money?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's, and I won't try to address exactly where, because I sure don't know, but I do believe there's a lot of funding sources out there that are just right for this, for what we're proposing, particularly when you look at the jobs training. Those are huge sources where you can tap into funding streams. So, but again, some of these others others that are on our committee may want to address it, but I don't think it'll be a problem once we get moving.
The other thing also is you stated that, let's say as you're cruising along, all of a sudden things hit a brick wall and then the building comes back to us, to the county. Is that part of the contract
Yes.
you wanted to?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to have everything, drafted up and looked over and make sure it's agreeable to each party.
Well, me personally, I would like to see, again, the architecture, the drawings, the plan, and of course, what type of contract we would have with this. But I do like what you're trying to do, the concept there. But I think there's a lot more information we'll need down the road for this to continue on as far as being a project.
Okay, so we look forward to further conversation with you.
What's your anticipated timeline? Let's just say from the initial contract, what's that agreement? What's your timeline plan of segmenting out the development of the project?
I don't see it taking more than 18 months to 24 months to get it, to get it done. I do, that's aggressive, but I think if we can, of course, go ahead and get moving on it, which means we have a contract in place and giving us the liberty to move forward. I think we can go ahead and get at it pretty
There's a lot
hard.
of work to be done. That's an old building.
There is, right. There is. Yeah. I'm thinking, and again, this is just a preliminary conversation. We need to sit down and really massage this thing and put it together. But I see 18 to 24 months to be up and running in terms of, in there making a difference with some funding behind us. Is that?
Is that factoring in all the stuff that will go wrong along the way?
Yes.
Figuring, everything's going to cost 10% more than you originally. thought.
Absolutely,
Time
absolutely.
Time is part of that equation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would ask the county attorney what kind of position the county is in from a liability standpoint, entering into an agreement as such, and how do we go about doing that?
If you want 30 seconds law on this, you all have often heard me talk about some of the restrictions in the state statutes about conveyance of county-owned property. Happy to tell you, this is an area where there is some considerable flexibility. There's a neat statute, another one I had in my hands 10 years ago, that says that for a purpose that the county has authority to appropriate funds for, and there are several statutes, bits and pieces of authority to, I believe, would authorize the county to appropriate funds for some of these purposes if you see fit, the board sees fit. And since that's true, the statute I'm talking about authorizes the county to convey county-owned property to an entity to carry out those purposes if the board sees fit. Now, liability, you always seek to cover that sort of thing and all the contingencies in an agreement to bring a working partnership to fruition. So we would just address those at the appropriate time.
I wanted to address real quick some of the questions because one of the things we needed to do is come to the meeting first and kind of get a feel for your reaction and, your support, because it is going to cost quite a bit of money to get, like a plan together, because Belk Architecture, it's going to need some money to get that plan together. So some of that, some of the answers to your questions will come a little bit, better and more clarity as we get the plan going. But, we didn't want to go off and start, spending money on that and everybody saying, no, that's absolutely not going to happen.
Right.
So that, I just want to clarify that some of this stuff, we know what we know now, just based on limited information, because we need to spend more money to get a stronger plan together. But this is all really good stuff. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I like the program, especially that it's a non-secular program that has a lot of flexibility and a lot more control in the hands of the organization. I like your approach
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I like the concept too.
Yes, sir.
That building is sort of a historic site, so to speak, in Person County, and especially in the Timberlake area, important to a lot of people. So many of our citizens attended school there over a long period of time. My wife taught school there, so it's a special place.
Yes, sir.
I believe maybe the first time I heard about the possibility of doing something there may have gone back as far as 2005. So it's not a new topic of discussion,
Right.
but I'm encouraged by what I hear and the approach that you're taking in your committee and your people to be a location that we could be proud of in Person County and Timberlake. And so I look forward to working with you and
Thank you.
and pulling things together that we can actually make it happen. I'm encouraged too by the fact that you've got an estimate and a quote, and that didn't throw your concept plan in the trash can. So you're still willing to go for that project, even though it's got a high price tag.
Yes.
But the end results will certainly be well worth it. So again, I look forward to working with you. I don't know exactly what the next steps are. Government work is not as simple as it ought to be. Government work most of the time doesn't use common sense. So we got all the hoops and everything to jump through, but that's why we have the attorney and he will guide us and direct us through that. So I don't know. Other questions or comments from commissioners, anyone?
Chairman,
Or, yes, sir.
great concept, wonderful idea.
Thank you.
That's one question. Been a lifelong historical society member. We use a room in buildings 317 to store artifacts, documents. We sell Person County heritage books. We have 3 volumes. We've got stacks and stacks of them on pallets. We've recently been broken into. Luckily, the vandals didn't destroy the good stuff, but they tore the room all to pieces. And so what my question here is, we've relocated part of this to another classroom. And would we have a overlap to utilize one of these rooms until we can find a more suitable location off campus?
Sure, and I think Rick, thank you, Rick, for coming up and speaking. A lot of this is going to be worked out in the details of how we put it together. So we're
And
open,
in stages.
right? We're open to work with the community, work with
Right.
commissioners and do what we need to
Right.
do to make it work for everybody. So I just want to be on the record for saying that.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a plan regarding community outreach, community listen sessions to inform the community of this concept and to get community buy-in?
We've talked about that, so that's something that's on our radar. We will address that during the process. Yes, sir.
Further questions?
No other questions? No.
Anyone? Guidance, Mr. Attorney?
Chairman and Commissioners, what I think I want to suggest is that these gentlemen and other folks who are interested in bringing this to reality, maybe sit down and write a concise concept paper. I don't mean anything lengthy, voluminous, but just put some more of the details down on paper. I hear significant interest from the board. So if we could get some more details in hand, there could be a future board discussion, I would suggest, where the board might wish to direct me to start doing some work.
Can I meet with you and we can, because there may be some specific things that you're looking for?
I am easy to find, happy to do that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Be glad to do that.
Before we could do an agreement related to the exact property, would a survey be necessary?
It might be, since we're apparently talking about not conveying the entirety of the property. So yeah, that's the sort of thing that
Would come out.
flesh
Okay.
out.
All right.
Is it okay to bring this card up to you? Okay. I'll leave this with you. We never direct contact.
Right, thanks, so.
Okay, if you all don't have any more further questions of me, I would like to ask that those who are here that are part of the group, if they would stand to you and see who they are. So I'm so grateful to have this team of people working with me. I'm a preacher. I don't claim to be much else. So I am very grateful to have a talented group of people, and there are a whole lot more that are not here this morning. So, you know, we want to work with this community and make sure that the people are getting every opportunity to succeed in life. So thank you for your time this morning. We look forward to further conversation.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is item number 3. Fiscal year 2022, 2023 budget ordinance. Ms. York and Ms. Weinberg.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have your adopted, soon to be adopted, we hope, budget before you for fiscal year 22-23. From the recommended budget, we've had one budget work session, and we have added an additional $332,761 in expenditures coming from the general fund. That was the decision of the board at the work session. And then we also have a couple of additional fees that were recognized after the recommended budget. So you'll find those on the agenda abstract. They're all for the health department. We have incorporated those into your fee schedule and are happy to answer any questions that you might have about those. So you have conducted a public hearing as required by general statute. The last step in getting to an adopted budget then is a vote of the board at an official meeting. Are there any questions that either Amy or myself could answer for you related to your budget? Yes. Yeah, please. Thanks, Amy.
Changes to the board.
Thank
Before
you.
you approved. You should have an agenda abstract, an adjustments summary that lists the changes made by the board to the recommended, and a copy of the budget ordinance and the fees.
Yeah.
After final quotes were received from Parks and Recreation for the Kirby ADA improvements, the total budgeted increase for the changes that the board discussed and instructed for staff to apply to the recommended budget was estimated to be the $332,761 that the county manager just mentioned. The detail of those changes are included on the chart titled Adjustments from Recommended to Adopted Budget. Please note that a revised copy of this form was provided to replace the one that was originally included in your agenda packet. This was due to an estimate that was incorrectly reported for the total capital investment fund budget, which was the second fund listed right under the general fund. The total for the capital investment fund was initially typed in as $7,839,223, which should have been reported as $7,869,223. The corrected form should reflect a total amended budget at the bottom of that page for $88,188,833. All changes that the board made to the recommended budget are reported in the general fund. These included an increase of $54,600 for the interim county manager's contract, $180,000 to be dedicated in a contingency line for certain EMS salary adjustments, $82,110 for the Kirby ADA improvements, and $16,051 in part-time costs for the health department. No adjustments were applied to any of the special revenue funds or the stormwater fund. If you'll refer to the agenda abstract summary, you'll notice that we also listed some health department fees that were approved after the recommended budget was presented. These included 4 immunization fees and 1 family planning fee, which have been incorporated on pages 12 and 13 of the fee schedule attachment to the budget ordinance. And lastly, this is a small thing, on page 7 of the budget ordinance copy in your packet, the year of adoption was printed to be 2023 instead of 2022. The original budget ordinance to be signed after the board's adoption has already been corrected, but just wanted you to be aware of that small error. So if you're satisfied with the changes and revisions presented, we would ask that you adopt fiscal year 23 budget ordinance and fee schedule as provided.
Board member questions? Thank you, Amy. Everybody's happy, huh?
Guess we did our job already, huh?
Yeah. Appreciate the explanation and clarity. There was some changes that were made. I don't know about you guys, but I feel good about this budget because I think your budget shows your priorities. It shows your plan, and we continue to keep education at sort of in the top 3 or 4 as we should, or maybe better, as well as public safety. I think Person County has a good record of funding and supporting public safety in our county as we move forward and go forward. And so I think it's a good budget. It has increased, which I don't necessarily like, but it's somewhat like other business. It's the cost of doing business. And a lot of that we don't have any control over. Think about a gallon of gasoline now. So other items are in the same category. We don't have any control over. So we just sort of have to go with it and keep supporting. But again, I think it's a good budget for the citizens of Person County, and appreciate all the work that our board has put into it, and the finance department and county manager. So any other comments?
I'd like to thank the finance director and those involved in drafting this. Thank you for adding the COLA to the county and board employees plans. And it's been long overdue. I just think it's imperative that we reward them more money, especially during this time of inflation and uncertainty. There's been, I think, a 12-year lapse since they had the cost of living. So thank you all for looking into that and helping these guys out across the departments.
And thank you, Commissioner Palmer, for saying that. I would add to that just another word or two. Way back earlier in the year when we began some very early discussions about the budget, the COLA increase was something there that Manager York brought up, and we discussed and didn't have any reservations at all about doing this because of the need. Again, a testimony to her insight as to what the county employees did need. Our county employees are what makes this work. And we need to support them. And that's another area I think we've done a fairly good job. We haven't done probably a perfect job, but a fairly good job of supporting our employees, because we can make all the decisions we want in this boardroom, but the employees are the ones that make it happen. And we do appreciate them, thank them, and want to support them. And this is a way of showing that, I believe. Any other comments, commissioners? Hearing none, do we have a motion to?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 22-23 budget ordinance.
We have a motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried. Item number 4, American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Grant Project Ordinance and related policies. Ms. Amy, you're up
I'm
again.
up again. You should have in your grant project, you should have in your packet a grant project ordinance for the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 that replaces the original ordinance approved on June 7th, 2021. This is as a result of new state requirements and further clarification on eligibility criteria of ARPA expenditures. The primary update from the state that drives our need for your readoption of this ordinance is the authorization provided to county and city governments to elect a standard allowance that will facilitate the pledge of existing expenditures, such as salaries and wages, for the provision of government services. As recommended by the School of Government, we are proposing in Section 2 of this ordinance to accept the standard allowance and expend all its American Rescue Plan funds for the provision of government services. For ease in reporting, this ordinance proposes to apply all $7,670,470 of the project expenditures to salary and benefits for the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Communications, Emergency Medical Services, and the Parks and Recreation Department. It is anticipated that between the 4 departments, the entire ARPA allotment for Person County will be expended by end of fiscal year 23. This will prevent the need for reporting applicable costs in future years to the state through 2026, when the reporting period for ARPA funds expire. These supplanted funds will then be transferred to the general fund for the board's consideration as to how they will be spent. To date, the board has set aside $2,750,000 for potential grant matches associated with the broadband infrastructure, leaving a remaining uncommitted balance of just over $4.9 million. It is anticipated that a committee will present other funding recommendations to the board in the coming months. In addition to the grant project ordinance, there are 2 related policies that the state requires we have in place before we begin pledging expenditures. The first is a non-discrimination policy that basically reaffirms that Person County will ensure that no person shall be subject to discrimination under any programs or activities administered by the county that are funded in whole or in part with the American Recovery Plan funds. Under this policy, the Assistant County Manager will review submitted complaints, inform county leadership, and report to the Treasury Department as required. The second policy required for adoption is the conflict of interest policy that establishes the application of conflict of interest standards when the county enters into a contract or makes a subaward with vendors paid by the county using ARP funds. For this policy, I am listed as the point of contact and designated official to complete disclosure forms and the compliance checklist if the value of a proposed contract or subaward exceeds $250,000. And I apologize, but there's a small spelling error in the title of that policy for the word government. The original will be corrected before signatures are obtained. I'll be glad to entertain any questions regarding these documents, but if there are none, I would ask the board to adopt the grant project ordinance, the non-discrimination policy, and the conflict of interest policy as presented.
Board member questions? Mr. Attorney?
Brief comments. If you read these two policies, particularly the conflict of interest policy, it might scare you to death. But it would be a very good thing if you would read them carefully, and all county staff members who will have their hands in administering
Absolutely.
these grant projects and these contracts to be funded with the grant proceeds.
Yes.
I actually taught a class at NC State a couple of weeks ago and talked about these state and federal requirements that you see in this conflict of interest policy. What I told them, one thing I told them was, just think about all these ethical requirements this way. Don't do anything that you wouldn't be proud to have your mother or your children read about in the newspaper. If you're not proud, it probably means it's unethical, and it might mean it's unlawful under state or federal law. So there are prohibitions on accepting gifts or favors from contractors, and lots of other things that are criminal violations. So all this stuff's important. Happy to help you all understand and apply, elected officials and county staff.
Same. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody? Thanks for that clarity. So you can't take the chair with you.
Understood.
And we do both of these in one motion.
Yes, sir, you can, the grant, the ordinance, and the two policies. One motion is perfect.
We have a motion to accept the two plans as presented.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 grant project ordinances and the resolutions for the Board of Commissioners to adopt a non-discriminating policy and a conflict of interest policy.
Motion on the floor, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried. Item number 5 on the agenda is Person County State of Emergency and Emergency Management Ordinances revisions. Mr. Thomas Wallenberg.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
At the request of the board, we looked at our two emergency management ordinances, both the state of emergency management or state of emergency ordinance and the emergency management ordinance. And you have the agenda abstract in your packet. So we'll start with the state of emergency ordinance. Two of our goals is going through these ordinances were to make sure we were compliant with North Carolina statutes as they are written, but also to make sure that our language was current, basically what other emergency management organizations and county governments were using. So those were the two things that we tried to balance against. So starting with the state of emergency ordinance, our major language changes are a revision of the definition of what an emergency is to a more sort of common and updated standard, define the notification requirements by the chair to the whole board of county commissioners, define the process for the termination of a declaration with or without Board of County Commissioner concurrence at 60 days unless extended by the Board of County Commissioners. And then we added a section for a periodic review of the ordinance on an annual basis or after any event in which an after action review is conducted following an SOE. And hopefully that will keep us from being in this situation where we're 10 years out having to look at these again. So again, I know that's a bit of an eye chart, but really define what an emergency means. And really this definition really allows us to be more broad in how we define an emergency, particularly with things like public health, cybersecurity, those types of things. It's just a more broad definition that was in the original ordinance. If a state of emergency exists or is threatened, the chair can make a finding and issue a public declaration. That's by North Carolina statute. The chair has the authority to do that. What's different in here is we said within 48 hours of issuance, the chair shall contact each board member and ensure they have been advised, and that those contacts will be recorded so that we have a record to say, you know, all the commissioners were advised, and this was the method in which it was done. Any commissioner can request from the chair an emergency or special meeting to discuss the reasons for a state of emergency, its provisions, and its expected duration. So any commissioner can call that if they have questions about the state of emergency or the provisions contained within. What was not in the last ordinance and what we felt needed to be in there was some process for a termination of declaration of a state of emergency. So there's really the declaration can be terminated by the chair or at the date time established in the declaration if a date time is put in the declaration when it's going to expire. Two provisions underneath of that article are 14 calendar days after the issuance of the declaration. The state of emergency may not be continued without concurrence by the majority of the Board of Commissioners during an official meeting. So the chair can can make the declaration, but within 14 days, basically the board has to show concurrence. At 60 calendar days, if nothing else happens, at 60 calendar days after the issuance of the SOE, the declaration will automatically expire unless the Board of Commissioners extends the declaration. So kind of in review, again, the ordinance will be reviewed on an annual basis to make sure it's concurrent with North Carolina general statutes. When an SOE is declared, an AER will be conducted to capture lessons learned and provide an analysis of that effectiveness. So those are the major changes to the state of emergency ordinance. The emergency management ordinance. So again, summary of major language changes are revision of definitions to reflect current practice. This ordinance was a little bit outdated based on current practice. Revise the language to be consistent with the terms emergency manager and office of emergency management. Again, that sort of fluctuated in the last ordinance. Revise duties and responsibilities for the emergency manager. Better define the role authority of the Office of Emergency Management, particularly during a hazardous materials incident, and included language for liability for responsible parties. And that more clearly indicates that the county will use the National Incident Management System to respond to and mitigate large-scale emergencies and hazardous materials incidents, which is actually required by federal law. In the intent and purpose, you'll see that we expanded and updated almost all the definitions that were in the from the original ordinance to make them more consistent with today's language. On day-to-day duties and responsibilities, we expanded to define the roles for the emergency manager, particularly in terms of daily operations, plan development, review, and then within the Office of Emergency Management, preparedness, response, mitigation, and training, and really define the role of the emergency manager in the Office of Emergency Management is communication and collaboration with all applicable stakeholders. Updated the hazardous materials section, outlines the responsibilities for hazardous materials emergencies within the county, establishes the authority to remove, abate, and remedy hazardous materials emergencies, and establishes the ability to obtain administrative search warrants if needed to effect a change within or to mitigate the incident, and then clearly define liability to the responsible party for all reasonable costs incurred in responding and mitigating to an incident. Again, National Incident Management System and Incident Command System. Those are now the ordinance mandates that we will follow those or at least follow that framework for any large scale emergency or hazardous materials incident. And again, that's required by federal law. So in summary, both revised ordinances reflect current practice and meet requirements of the North Carolina Emergency Management Act. Comparison was done again. These ordinances, not just against North Carolina statute, but with other jurisdictions to ensure that we were consistent with our partners. We do know that in 2023, there will be revisions to the North Carolina Emergency Management Act. We will track those changes, and if current ordinances are impacted, we'll bring those revisions back to the board for consideration. So are there any questions at this time?
In section 1213, why was the entire section scrapped in case of absence or disability of the chairman?
According to Mr. Hankins, there was no requirement in state code that allowed that, and that was his strike. I'll ask him if he's got any further clarification on that.
Correct me, please. With that.
It was on page 5 of the of the state of emergency ordinance.
Yeah,
Mr. Swanberg mentioned that one of the things he had to, and we have to, the board has to be careful about, is making all of this consistent with primarily the Emergency Management Act at the state level, and this does that. That statute provides, the set of statutes provides a lot of discretion to the chair. You all clearly were interested in giving the board a larger role. So overall, this does that without in any way infringing upon the authority that is provided to the chair by those statutes. It's consistent with the statute. That part of that absence of disability of the chairman, there's just no reason for that. The statute does not provide for what this language in the draft that I first reviewed said. It just doesn't. So we have to follow the statute.
So just for clarification, if the chairman is indisposed and is unable to call a state of emergency, would it, is it in the statute that the vice chairman would come in and issue the state of emergency?
We would revert back to the general provisions of the county government chapter 153A.
Okay.
It would depend on the extent of the disability of the chair. And if the vice chair, if the disability is significant enough that the vice chair really becomes the active chair of the board, it would be my call that the vice chair then, the acting chair then does have that authority.
Also, quick question regarding, you had it on the slide, a commissioner call a special meeting to end request, okay. All right, that's, okay, could request. Yeah.
There are two types of meetings. Remember, the typical special meeting
And the emergency.
requires 48 hours notice. But the Administrative law provides for the other thing, an emergency meeting. That means the hurricane is on the way. And you can, the chair can sign a notice calling that meeting without 48 hours notice.
Okay, I agree with it. I just wanted some clarification on that.
Give me an example of an administrative warrant.
So if we had to enter a property because maybe there's been some sort of contamination and we needed to enter that property, it's not a criminal warrant, it's an administrative warrant,
okay.
giving us permission to go onto that private property to investigate that situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions?
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. I have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is that a motion to actually approve?
A motion to approve both ordinances.
Let me suggest that you do them one by one.
Okay.
To make sure that you comply with the statutory requirements about adoption of ordinances. Both of these are pretty detailed, lengthy ordinances.
All right, first motion is to approve the Person County State of Emergency Ordinance that were hereby revised for this meeting.
We have a motion on the floor to accept the state of emergency ordinance. Any questions, further comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve the Person County Emergency Management Ordinance hereby revised at this said meeting.
Motion to accept the emergency management ordinance Further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6, resolution designating the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month. Mr. Hill.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
In your agenda abstract, and I won't read this verbatim, but so the National Recreation and Parks Association and the North Carolina Recreation and Parks Association recommends that local leaders of counties and municipalities recognize their parks and recreation departments and the services that they provide the citizens. So as you all know, that it's very, very important part of our community is recreation, arts and parks. The roles that it plays and the services that it plays in everybody's lives. I don't think I know anybody that's never been to a park or that's never had a kid or a family member or something associated with the park or any of its amenities and programs. Further, we have to understand that Parks and Recreation is very important to the physical and the cognitive health of the community. It's important to prevent crime. It's important for economic development, attracting people into your community. And also it's important to understand the economic impact that, Parks and Recreation has to a community as well, because as you know, you go to a ballpark, you're going to spend money on gas and Gatorade. So it's not just the actual event itself. So I would, I'm here for you to, to get you to adopt the resolution that July is Parks and Recreation Month for Person County.
Any questions of Mr. Hill? I do have the resolution and I'll be happy to read it if no other questions at this point. Okay, it's a resolution designating the month of July as Park and Recreation Month in Person County. Whereas parks and recreation is an integral part of communities throughout the country, including the state of North Carolina. And whereas parks and recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks. And whereas parks and recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating issues such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas parks and recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designated to promote active lifestyles. And whereas the parks or park and recreation program and educational activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, environmental education are critical to the childhood development. And whereas parks and recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our state. And whereas parks and recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient to the race in the face of natural disasters. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the economical beauty of our state and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Whereas local parks in our state generated over $6 billion in economic activity and provided over 37,000 jobs, ranking NC as 10th in the nation. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, And whereas the state of North Carolina recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Person County Board of Commissioners hereby designates the month of July as Park and Recreation Month in Person County and encourages all citizens to celebrate by participating in their choice of pleasurable activities. Adopted this the 20th day of June, 2022, and signed Gordon Powell, Chair and Person County Commissioners. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we support the resolution for Parks and Recreation Month.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to accept the resolution as stated. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Could I? Go ahead. As you know, John often has a lot of words, so I figured he read.
Thank y'all very much.
He
And
wrote-
come out July and check out all of our activities. And also, I would like to take this time to introduce my new Assistant Director, Kristen Herndon. She is going to be helping to lead the charge to promote Parks and Recreation and build things. And also, she is accepting an award at the National Parks and Recreation Association Conference as the Young Professional of the Year Award. So she will be presenting at the national conference this year.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
Item number 7 on the agenda is request acceptance of funding from Golden Leaf Site Program and authorize chair and staff to carry out requirements of the agreement. Ms. Wilbur.
Good morning. I bring good news. In March, you all authorized me to apply for a grant from Golden Leaf Foundation Site Program. I'm pleased to announce that at their June 2nd board meeting, they did provide funding for us to receive $973,750 to move forward with additional due diligence and clearing and grading at the North Park site. I had presented to you last month a request to put out an RFP for timbering of that site, as I had been approached that there was value in that. Golden Leaf came up and met in between you all approving that and me putting out that RFP. And I also met with the consultant, and based on that, I postponed that RFP. We didn't want $40,000 of value in the timber to get in the way of a nearly $1 million grant. It is a 12-month deadline to complete the project. There are extensions that we can apply for as we need to, and we probably will with the way things are going with construction. However, for the sake of having 2 projects to manage also, I would prefer to incorporate that into the single RFP to let any bidders know that there's also value in the timber out there and hope to approach helping out our costs in that way. So today I'm asking you all to authorize the agreement to accept the funds and to authorize staff to carry out what we need to do to complete the project.
So we're postponing the timbering till another date.
Well, no, what I was hoping to do is when I put out the bid for whoever wants to come and do the clearing and grading, to let them know that there's this value and have that incorporated into one
Into the
project.
RFP. Okay.
It's less administrative work on our side. And then we don't want to have an agreement with somebody to go out and log it that holds up and jeopardizes our grant because we
Gotcha.
have that
Gotcha.
12-month
Yeah, so
period.
they can coordinate that then to their, okay.
Right.
Mr. Paul.
Yes, sir.
Sure, isn't that all virtual and virgin hardwoods in there?
I'm not sure. I got the proposal over the weekend from the consultant, so I can look up the language of how he describes it. But he did affirm an estimate of 40 to 45,000.
That was for all of the timber.
Right, and he, recommended doing an official cruise because there's a creek that borders the bottom. There's buffers that need to be left in place for that. Mixed, mature mixed hardwoods. Sorry.
Other
Any
questions?
questions?
Thank you for your work on that. That will certainly increase the likelihood of getting a client there. That's the 25 acre, 24 acres.
Roughly 25.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay. And to give us another product for prospective investors in the county. Thank you for that. No other questions? Do we have a motion to?
Motion
Approve the
authorize the
request.
chairman to execute the grantee acknowledgement and agreement.
Motion on the floor. Any questions or comments?
Can I just add that the
Yes.
grant funding will go into the Economic Catalyst Fund for you all,
Mhm.
just for clarification.
Okay. No other questions? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8 on the agenda is resolution amending the Economic Development Commission for a change in membership. Just a brief comment going back about 5.5 years now ago when we reorganized the EDC board. We did go with a 5-year term to originally extend that, like I said, 5 years. With the understanding that when those terms expired, then we would bring about a change in the language there that would stagger those terms. And so that's what this is all about, and that's what was in your packet. And I don't know if any of you have any questions there or not, but again, we would go to staggered terms of 4 years for 3 members and 5 years for 3 other members.
So how did we come up with the magic number of 5 years? Because I look at all the other boards, they're usually 1 to a maximum 3-year terms. And there's a 5-year term for the Economic Development Committee. And then the only other one is a 6-year term for industrial. I'm like, and there's 7 positions and nobody, even the commissioners only have 4-year terms. Where did this magic number of 5, 7, 6 years come up when other boards are maxed out at 3 years?
Well, the original thinking was for longevity there, that the people at the table would have a longer term, because economic development is a very slow moving train, so to speak. And so that was a concept that we would need their expertise at the table for a long period of time. And I've never seen that position or that committee field that you just spoke of, 6-year term.
6-year term,
Yeah,
7 positions available.
right. And you can't get anybody to.
There's nobody signed up for it, no. And then how are you going to decide who's going to get the 3-year terms, who's going to get the 4-year terms? Because that's.
Well, it'd be part of a motion that.
I think the applicants need to know what they're applying for. Is it a 3-year term or a 4-year term?
We will do whatever you like.
I'm just asking.
Just,
I'd want to know if I was applying for something.
Did we?
go ahead, sir.
Did we advertise this as a 5-year or 3-year, or did we advertise it as, I think everybody was under the assumption it was a 5-year?
Yes, I can answer that question. It was advertised in the month of May, which is according to our policy, We advertise board and committees of term vacancies that's coming up, like the June 30th, in this case. We advertise those 45 days out, is what our policy says. It was advertised as a 5-year term because that's what the current resolution outlines, is a 5-year term. If we're going to stagger the terms so they are different, they don't all expire at the same time, a new resolution would have to be adopted, changing such, which is what is before you.
Right, and then the applicants need to be notified because what term are they applying for?
Well, I mean, they're already applying for 5 years.
Right,
So it shouldn't matter if we go 3 or we go 5. They're already committing for 5 years if they
would
apply
you
for
want
this
to be
position.
asked if you were an applicant? Would you want to be asked? No, okay.
I'm thinking you're already locked into 5 years and this is just cutting you back to 3.
Okay,
And actually, the
Four.
resolution before you is suggesting 4-year and 5-year terms. So they don't all expire at the same time.
okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, please.
Without further complicating this, let me point out 2 necessary technical corrections that we will make with your blessing if the board sees fit to adopt the resolution. We'll look at the very first line, say what they are, 2 of them. Very first line refers to General Statutes, Chapter 58. That actually should be Chapter 158. Toward the end of this, where it says 1D, the language now says reappointments by the Board of County Commissioners. That for clarity purposes really should strike the word reappointments and substitute the words future appointments. Probably would not be reappointing the same people or all the same people. So it would read future appointments by the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you for clarifying that. Make it better going forward. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion then to accept the resolution. The resolution as stated with the changes added by our attorney.
Mr. Chair, I make the motion that we accept the resolutions with the changes that were made by our attorney.
Have a motion. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. And item number 9 on the agenda is appointments to boards and committees. Ms. Reeves.
Thank you. As I just outlined, we did an advertisement mid-May through the local newspaper as well as on the county website for current vacancies and those with the expected terms to expire June 30th. And what we have before you is the results of that for interested citizen applications. And these were before the board for nomination and appointment as you deem appropriate. So we will do these by separate boards and committees. The first one before you is the ABC board. It is 1 position available. We have 2 applications for a 3-year term. Mike Laws is requesting reappointment and Alan Southfield is requesting appointment. What is the desire of the board?
Motion to reappoint Mike Laws.
Okay, any other nominations or appointments? Motion is to appoint Mike Laws. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, motion carried.
Thank you. The
Okay.
next one before you is related to the Agricultural Advisory Board. This is through our voluntary ag district ordinance. We actually have vacancies in the Allensville, Bushy Fork, Alapeel, and Roxborough townships. These will be effective the end of June. This is for a 3-year term. The only application received to date is from Bruce Whitfield, who is requesting appointment to serve as the representative in the Bushy Fork Township.
We only have one, Mr. Whitfield.
That's correct.
Okay,
I understand it's a busy time for farmers and and Ms. McCormick was unable to get applications, even though I think she said some verbal commitments, did not have the applications in process to present to the board today.
Could we accept them at a later date?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, any of these that we have vacancies, we can certainly.
At any
accept
time, right,
At any
right.
time, and then I will bring those back before board at a future meeting for appointment, for consideration.
Okay, all in favor of Mr. Whitfield, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried. Next one.
Yes, the next one for your consideration is the Airport Commission. We have one position for a citizen at large to fulfill an unexpired term to December 31st of 2023. We had Mr. Robert Wilkerson request appointment, as well as Mr. Norman Carton III request appointment.
Madam Clerk, I'll ask a question. I'm not sure. I don't know either of these two gentlemen. I have read their application. And again, seem qualified, but would it be proper if we re-advertise this for the possibility of additional applicants?
If that is desirable.
And I say that because there's a lot happening at the airport. We're doing a lot of improvements and a lot going on there. Again, nothing against either of these two gentlemen because I don't know them, but that was just a thought. So I don't know, other commissioners, what you might think.
Mr. Chairman, I thought reading Mr. Robert Wilkern's application, he had FBO experience in aviation and the Durham Airport, Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority. He was with United Airlines from 1979 to 2000 and something. Airline transportation pilot, FAA certified flight instructor. I think he's probably got some qualifications and knowledge on airport activities. I would not think that he would not be a good candidate to fulfill a term.
Which is fine with me. I just asked a question.
Mr. Chair, my question on this, and it maybe not for this position, but we have another situation like this. If we reapply or re-advertise for this position, and are we saying no to these two gentlemen, or would they be able to apply if we
If the board desires, we can, if you desire to re-advertise, you can certainly deem these two still candidates, or you would actually like to start over. It is really the desire of the board. If they do not fulfill the criteria you have for this wonderful.
Right.
And I didn't make a motion. I was only making a comment. So I'll go with any motion that anyone wants to.
Chairman Powell, having read Mr. What's his name?
Wilkerson?
Mr. Robert Bob Wilkerson, he does have an extensive record
Oh, yeah.
with the
Yeah.
airport,
I read it.
different ones, different airport. And I'm quite sure he's retired now, so that will give him time to insert his professionalism into the job.
Okay, are you making a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion to appoint Mr. Bob Wilkerson. Any other comments, questions? Hear none, all in favor say aye. Aye. None. Opposed, none. Okay.
All right. And the next one for consideration is the Board of Health. We have one position for an engineer representative for an unexpired term to June 30th, 2023. Mr. Randy Eads, an engineer, has requested appointment. Also, we have one position for a dentist representative for a 3-year term. This would be a reappointment for Dr. Jeffrey Noblet, who is currently serving in that seat. There's also a vacancy for optometrist. We do not have an application before you today, but it's my understanding from the Board of Health Director that she has spoken to one who is local in the community, would be submitting an application forthcoming, which will be before you at a future meeting. So today I'm asking you to consider Mr. East for the engineer representative and Dr. Noblet as the dentist representative.
We're doing both those in one motion.
Yes, sir.
We have a Motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Board of Health appointees to Randy Eeks and Dr. Jeffrey Noblick, the Board of Health.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carried.
All right, next on your list is the Economic Development Commission with your newly appointed resolution. You now have 3 people with 4-year terms, 3 people with 5-year terms eligible. And there's also 1 minority representative from your citizens for a 4-year term. So before you, for those 6 positions that have a split of 3 4-year terms, 3 5-year terms, we have a pool of 10 candidates. The candidates include Scott McKinney, Doug Weaver Sr., both of those requesting appointment. Donald Long is requesting reappointment. Teresa Birch is requesting appointment. Jody Blackwell requesting appointment. Sherry Clayton requesting appointment. Kenneth Perry requesting reappointment. Gordon Philip Allen Jr. requesting reappointment. Jay Poindexter Jr. requesting appointment. Thomas Bratcher requesting appointment. Again, from these 10 applications, you will have 3 members appointed with a 4-year term, 3 members with a 5-year term, and 1 member being the minority representative. So that's 7 citizens from this pool of 10, and as well as the selected term of 4-year, 5-year. Any questions?
Anybody? Well, for discussion, based on what we just passed as a resolution, I would like to nominate Mr. Jay Poindexter, Jody Blackwell, and Donald Long to a 4-year term. Should we do those?
Yeah, we could do 3 for each term limit separately, yes,
Okay.
if that's easier. So it's my understanding you are nominating Jay Poindexter, Jody Blackwell, and Donald Long for a
4-year
4-year
term,
term.
yes.
For 3 members.
Yes. Any follow-up or questions from commissioners?
Previously picked mine, I like Jay Poindexter for a 4-year term, Thomas Bratcher and Doug Weaver.
Okay, we have 2. We could reverse order on that is fine. We've done this in the past. We have 2 motions, so we,
Okay, can you repeat your motion, Commissioner Palmer? Did you make a motion? Or
Yes,
Okay, can you repeat the 3 candidates you were?
Jay Poindexter, Thomas Bratcher, Doug Weaver for a 4-year term.
Okay, so Jay Poindexter, Thomas Bratcher, and Doug Weaver Sr. for 4-year term.
Yes, ma'am.
okay, all in favor of, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, so your who, Mr. Chairman, who did you originally make a motion for? And for how many years?
Same term, 4, but Jay Poindexter, Jody Blackwell, and Donald Long.
Okay.
So if we vote, if that's
So
appropriate,
for clarity, Mr. Chairman, is the board voting on the second motion?
Yes. Yes, voting on the second motion, which was Bratcher, Weaver, and
Poindexter.
Poindexter.
all in favor of that motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So we got the. So then we go back to my motion, which was Poindexter, Blackwell, and Long for a 4-year term. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Got that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So now for consideration, we need 3 members. for a 5-year term selected.
Okay, I'll make a motion there as well. 5-year term for Mr. Philip Allen, Scott McKinney, and Sherry Clayton. Any comments or additional nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Name those three again, please.
Mr. Philip Allen, Scott McKinney, and Sherry Clayton. Okay, now do we need,
Yes, sir, we need one nomination for appointment for a representative serving as a minority representative.
and we had one applicant there, and that's Mr. Kenneth Perry.
This would also be for a 4-year term.
Mhm. All in favor of Mr. Kenneth Perry to be reappointed, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
All right, and then lastly, for your EDC, we have one non-voting position for an agricultural farm community representative. Dr. Claudia Berriel is requesting appointment, and this would be a 5-year term.
Okay, we have a request to reappoint Claudia Berryhill. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next on your list is the Environmental Issues Advisory Committee. Mr. Robert Brower has requested reappointment, serving as the representative of the Allensville Township. This will be a 3-year reappointment.
Comments or questions? I wish we had the other 3 townships represented too, but we don't. None of
They have
those.
struggled to
Yeah,
find
it's
another
hard.
farm.
Okay, all in favor of the request from Mr. Power? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? None, motion carried. Thank you.
All right, and then next for your consideration is on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. We have a application from the Reverend Elizabeth McCoy requested reappointment. She's present here in the audience today representing the faith community. Also, Kelly Fody is requesting reappointment representing a nonprofit agency. And we have Teresa Birch requesting appointment, serving as one of your citizens at large on this committee.
The nominations, commissioners?
Motion to appoint all 3.
Okay, that would be McCoy and Bodie and Birch.
Correct.
Those are the 3 you have?
Correct.
Okay, discussion or others? All in favor of the 3 individuals presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, motion carried.
Next for your consideration is the Library Advisory Board. We have Ms. Ann Gibson requesting reappointment for a 3-year term.
Motion to approve Ann Gibson for the road. She has excellent attendance.
Any discussion? All in favor of Ms. Ann Gibson, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried.
All right, next on your list is the PATS Transportation Advisory Board for a 3-year term. We have an application from Diane Cox representing her in her capacity as the Rural Planning Organization Director. She currently sits on this as that representative and is requesting their appointment.
Make a motion, we nominate her for reappointment.
Have a motion to reappoint Ms. Cox. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
Okay, next before you is consideration of 4 applicants for 1 position on the Person Caswell Lake Authority. This is a 3-year term. We have applications from Lindsay Wagstaff III, Anna Hester Martin, Randy King, and Frank Stoltzman.
Mr. Powell,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Randy King for this position.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to nominate Lindsay Wagstaff III for this position.
Any other nominations? Okay, we will go in reverse order again, the last nominations. Or nomination first, all in favor of Mr. Lindsay Wagstaff III, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, we
Sorry,
got-
can we get a show of hands up?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you for that. Next on your list is one application for 1 position for the Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees, 4-year term, 1 position available. Ms. Tracy Harris is requesting appointment.
Okay, we have 1 requesting appointment. All in, any questions or comments? Any others? Well, there won't be any others. Don't have an application.
Is this a reappointment?
No,
No.
no, Ms. Maggie Witt was serving in the seat and has decided not to reapply. So we will thank her for her years of service on the PCC Board of Trustees. So, but only 1 application was received for purchase.
Okay, all in favor of Tracy Harris? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, motion carried. All right,
All right, next consideration, and will be with your planning board. We have 3-year terms, 2 positions available, 6 applications. The applications are from Barry Walker is requesting reappointment. Sheila McGee is requesting reappointment. Requesting appointment are Joshua Clayton, Jermaine Wallace, Thomas Fratcher, and Jay Poindexter.
okay, nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Barry Walker and Thomas Bratcher.
Nominations for Barry Walker and Thomas Bratcher. Any other nominations?
Chairman Powell,
Yes.
I have Joshua Clayton and Jake Poindexter.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Poindexter would be ineligible as he already serves on 2 committees
Right.
at this point, the Equalization Review and the EDC. So he wouldn't be eligible to serve on a 3rd committee.
Realize he was already on.
Yes, sir.
So you want to then nominate Josh Clayton? Was that the name?
Yes, sir. Who's the other source? That's all we have.
Yeah. That's all. All right, go in reverse order again. All in favor of Mr. Clayton, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. Got your count?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, so then,
Then with the motion for Commissioner Gentry for Barry Walker and Thomas Fratcher is before you.
okay, all in favor of Mr. Walker and Mr. Bratcher, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Cindy.
Thank you. I think the last one before you today is the Recreation Advisory Board. We have 2 positions available, 3 applications. Billy Carter, request appointment. Donald Long, request reappointment. And Tabitha George, request reappointment.
Any, what's the desire of the board? Nominations, please.
Chairman Powell would like to nominate Donald Long and Tabitha George.
Any further nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of Mr. Donald Long and Tabitha George, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries. Is that it?
Thank you.
Item number 10 on the agenda is update on county's advocacy efforts related to Duke's carbon plan. Attorney Ellis. Yes, Hamptons, I'm sorry.
Bumpkin is here. You know, last year, the General Assembly enacted a piece of legislation that was very significant to Person County, and the governor signed it. And directs the Utilities Commission to initiate a proceeding and to adopt a plan for carbon dioxide reduction from Duke Energy plants, including to in Person County by some means. And so obviously, since that is a matter of great significance for Person County, the board directed staff to retain outside counsel to represent Person County and to intervene in that proceeding. So we retained Patrick Buffkin, who is standing before you. Patrick, in addition to being a well-respected attorney in Raleigh, my hometown, also serves as a member of the Raleigh City Council. He has an expertise in these utility matters and has been working hard with our economic development director and other staff members and me. So Patrick is going to make a public presentation and then followed, if the board sees fit, by a closed session discussion for you all to give whatever direction to him that you might wish.
Thank you,
Yes,
Attorney
sir.
Ellis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Patrick Buffkin of the Buffkin Law Office, one of the two outside consultants that you've hired to work on this matter. My co-venturer, Kevin O'Donnell, a fellow former member of the Utilities Commission staff, will be helping on power supply and economic related issues, while I'll be working hand in hand with him on the legal side and procedural issues in this proceeding. And as Mr. Ellis said, as a fellow local government official, I want to thank you for your service to this community. I know it takes time away from your business, family, and recreation, and I want to say thank you for making this commitment to this community, and thank you for the opportunity to work with you. I'll be rather brief and high level in introducing you to the carbon plan proceeding that is ongoing at the North Carolina Utilities Commission. Attorney Ellis covered most of this background. House Bill 951 was enacted into law last year, directing the Utilities Commission to develop a plan to reduce carbon emissions by 70% from Duke Energy's power plants located in North Carolina by 2030, and to go to zero carbon emissions by 2050, so-called carbon neutrality. So Duke has been engaging with various stakeholders for many months now and filed its proposed plan on May 16th. The Utilities Commission has set a schedule for public hearings and a potential expert witness hearing. We'll talk a little bit more about the process going forward later on in my presentation. And Person County is a party to that proceeding, having been granted intervention by the Utilities Commission on May 26th. And of course, again, as Attorney Ellis said in his introduction, the reason we are here is to talk about these two electric generating power plants that are located in Person County and have been an important part of this community for a long time and have been very key generation assets for Duke Energy for many decades. Under Duke's proposed carbon plans, the Mayo plant is proposed for closure under all scenarios in 2029. The Roxboro plant proposed closure varies under the scenarios that Duke has developed, with its proposed closure being in 2029, 2032, or 2034. And of course, very present in our mind is the question of what does this mean to the future of the Person County community? The Mayo and Roxboro generating plants represent significant investments, tax value, employment, and ancillary economic development. These plants are also key generation assets for Duke Energy. So the question that the Utilities Commission is interested in, and the parties in that proceeding,
What does the closure of these plants mean for Duke Energy and its customers and its obligations to meet power supply? So power supply is a profession unto itself. It's a very complicated endeavor. Duke has a group of engineers, analysts, and other professionals that do this work virtually year-round. The Utilities Commission has an annual process where they review Duke's power portfolio. And these sort of list of industry jargon that you see on the left is some of the constraints and requirements that Duke faces in developing its power supply portfolio. What I would like to focus your attention on is this graph on the right, which comes from Duke Energy's documents and plans. What you see here is a week from January, and it shows you how Duke meets its obligation, our expectation as customers, and the expectation of its federal regulators to provide near 100% reliable power. And so on the top of this graph, what you see is that squiggly line that represents Duke's total system demand, this kind of peak and valley. And if you think about your daily life and what you would be doing on a typical winter day, it's somewhat intuitive. What you see here, the peaks represent early morning hours when your electric heat is running at full speed. All of your friends and neighbors in the area and all of Duke's customers across the Carolinas are doing the exact same thing. And in those early morning hours, when people start turning on lights and running appliances and cooking food and drying hair, if you have hair, these are all the things that are happening every single day, and it drives Duke's energy demand to a peak. And utilities plan for the peak, again, trying to meet their 100% reliability obligation. So those high points that you see are typical morning hours. As the sun rises and the air warms, electric heat starts to run less and demand starts to drop. The sun comes up over the tree line and solar power starts to produce energy on the Duke system. Those are those bumps you see in the kind of gold color there. But let me back up and start from the top with electric demand. That gray area you see Duke is building in coal generation. The blue is natural gas powered plants. Again, the solar in the gold color, a little bit of hydro there in a light blue. And then the big block at the bottom, that always on, highly reliable, very efficient power is your nuclear power plants that run in a pretty steady state during these peak seasons. Now we're going to take a little bit different look at Duke's energy portfolio and their supply planning. So whereas in the last slide, we were looking at typical winter days with the peaks and valleys that come and the various generation assets that are brought on the system to meet that demand. Here we're looking at power supply planning over a 20, 30-year horizon. And this comes from Duke's carbon plan. And the goal of power supply planning is to make sure that there's adequate power to meet demand, make sure that power is reliable, and to do it in the least cost way to ensure that power is affordable. So as you move across from left to right, beginning at the left, in 2022, that's a picture of Duke's power supply portfolio today. It is what you would expect there, beginning at the bottom, 12 or 13% coal, 15 or 20% natural gas, a little bit more of nuclear, and then the gold color at the top is solar. So that's what Duke is planning on today, and the generation assets it has to meet its demand today. And under its proposed carbon plan, as you move left into the future of this planning horizon, what you see is less coal, more gas, more nuclear, more solar, and more renewable energy. As Duke tries to meet this mandate of reducing carbon emissions, we know that coal-fired power plants are a source of carbon emissions. So this is the natural consequence of this evolution that Duke Energy has been tasked with undertaking, and the Utilities Commission has been tasked with overseeing. And working in the background is this big multi-billion-dollar question that affects all of our lives and businesses' ability to serve their customers. What if there isn't enough power? And it may not be so much comfort, but this We are not the only ones that are grappling with this question across the country and even the world. Efforts to decarbonize the electric system are happening everywhere. And this is just a couple looks at what's going on across the country. So the bottom right from the Dallas Morning News, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, a group that is tasked with overseeing electric reliability and wholesale power supply, is predicting record demand this summer. And the agency has asked power generators, wholesale power producers to defer outages due to maintenance, anything that you can. So it's an all hands on deck situation when you're facing the kind of growing electric demand that's happening in Texas and here in North Carolina. Likewise, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, a group that monitors and regulates wholesale power supply in a broad part of the middle part of the country, also predicting risk of insufficient firm generation assets. That is, those assets that can be called upon to put power on the grid when it's needed. So power supply planning differentiates between these so-called firm assets that can be called upon immediately versus those intermittent assets such as solar and wind that only produce power when the sun's shining or the wind's blowing. And after I wrote these slides for you last week, a week ago today, in the hour ending 6 p.m., Duke Energy Carolina set a new combined total demand record for its system. So these are real problems, and we are in the middle of dealing with these problems here as demand rises, and Duke is being called upon to shutter old coal plants that produced reliable and economical power for many decades. And there is a role of the wholesale markets here that we are mindful of. You cannot build and generate power with gas plants without having access to wholesale gas markets. We have one big pipeline running through this state, the Transco Pipeline. And this slide is just to give you a context for what's going on nationally. We are in Transco Zone 5 that covers South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. And you see in this graph on the left that we are facing rising wholesale natural gas prices. That is, the people like Duke Energy that buy gas on the wholesale market to use it in things like power plants are facing rising costs. So we see this as a sign in Transco Zone 5 as rising costs reflect a reality that there's just not enough wholesale gas in this part of the country. There are efforts underway to bring gas to this part of the country, and that is going to be an important part of how Duke meets electric demand in the future. In the absence of coal generation, gas will play an important role, as you've already seen in those plans. And there's an important role to play for the wholesale markets here and making sure that folks like Duke Energy have access to wholesale gas at a reasonable cost. Now, we begin this journey and don't have a whole lot of answers for you today, commissioners, but we've got a lot of questions as we try to put the issues on the table and identify those opportunities where we can continue this partnership, this decades-long partnership between Duke Energy and the Person County community. So the big question for Duke is, of course, how do they maintain adequacy and reliability and affordability in their power system when they're being told to shutter power plants and bring on new and different kinds of generation resources? Where will those new generations resources be? Might they be located in Person County? There's some good reasons why they should. The land's here and available. You have trained, skilled workforce at the ready that's already been in those plants. You have ancillary service providers that have established relationships with Duke Energy that help support those plants. What kind of generation assets will replace Mayo and Roxborough? Not just talking about here in this county, but for Duke to meet that growing electric demand, what kind of resources are they going to have available? What fuel source will they use? Will it be gas? Will it be nuclear? Will it be some emerging technology like hydrogen? How big will these plants be? What's the tax base and employment for the community that they'll be located in? And are there ways to mitigate the impacts from closing the Mayo and Roxborough plants? Is it job retraining and support for the community? Is it Duke retaining employees? is its support for county community development efforts. So these, again, no answers for you today. These are the questions that we have on the table, and we will be working hand in hand with your staff and taking direction from you, the commissioners, on how we approach this case and how we navigate the path forward. So the Utilities Commission will hold several public hearings across the state on July 11th. The one closest to us here will be down the road in Durham. The Utilities Commission will receive comments from parties. Those are due currently on July 15th, and we'll be working again with your staff to develop those comments and speak on behalf of both the county government and the community when we present our arguments and concerns to the Utilities Commission. The process will go on. Parties will file brief and make lots of arguments to the Utilities Commission. And the Utilities Commission has been directed to make a decision and approve a carbon plan by the end of this year. And there may be more activity after that. There may be appeals. There may be reaction from the General Assembly if the General Assembly is of a mind that the commission didn't get it right. And we get to do all this again in a couple of years. Power supply planning never really stops. And the Utilities Commission is directed to revisit and reconsider the carbon plan on a 2-year basis. So again, happy to be working for you, grateful for this opportunity. And again, on behalf of Mr. O'Donnell and myself, glad to be here. Thank you. And I'd be happy to take any questions. As Mr. Ellis suggested, if you desire, we'll be available for a closed session meeting. But should you have any questions in this open session, be glad to field those now. And thank you.
Just seems like a no-win situation. It's an ongoing battle trying to figure out what to do with next generation, energy.
Yes, that's absolutely true, Commissioner. We, for about 80 years, the electric generating business didn't change a whole lot. And it was built around big central power stations and a transmission system that moved it out to where the power was needed. We've gone through just an incredible revolution in the energy industry in the last 15, 20 years, where generation assets are located all over the utility system. Power is moving in 2 directions, so to speak, and new technologies are coming that present new opportunities. It is, I guess, as the old trope goes, we are cursed to live in interesting times.
Other comments?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. Most people probably have never been on either site. It's not 2 plants. It's 2 plant sites. It's a total of 5 boilers. Those 5 boilers run almost a fourth of North Carolina's power. I just want those who are not aware to know what we're up against. They shut them down. You're gonna be putting quarters in a machine somewhere to get your electricity to your house. Thank you.
Well, this whole thing is incredibly complicated, but Duke Energy's presence in Person County has been here so long, been such a large part of the community, and everybody's concerned about it. And as we saw House Bill 951 passed, then that became law. And so the language in there is going to dictate what happens. And, we got to abide by the law. That's why we have Attorney Hankins here and why we have you here. But there has been quite a lot of discussions as to how to go about this. And we started off brainstorming with certain parties in the room and kicked this idea around and that idea around, and it's an ever-changing target. Every time we thought we had the right path, then there were conflicts of interest and other barriers. So we didn't stop. We changed what we were doing and our approach, and went from one expert to another. And at the end of the day, we wanted to be at the table, certainly want to be there. And in doing so, Person Can becomes an intervener. You just can't come up and put your name on the agenda and speak. So becoming an intervener in this process is important. That's, I don't know your position, how you would express it, but it's extremely important. So the bottom line is we did eventually come to you as a recommended expert to support our efforts going forward. And so we look to you and Attorney Hankins to advise us as we go forward to certainly keep us at the table, keep us as part of that conversation, and let Duke Energy know how important they are to us, not only from the energy standpoint, which is most important, as Mr. Commissioner Palmer just said, but it's such a huge part of the economy of Person County. So there's no one that's opposed to going forward with this in the right manner. And so again, we look to your expertise and leadership and things to come. So keep us informed.
Very good.
I
Thank
have
you,
a
Mr.
question,
Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
How many other sites are we competing against? Or is there a number of other sites that we are in the same situation that we're in with Duke right now?
Yeah, there are. I don't have that number with me today or at the top of my mind, but there are other communities that are facing a very same or similar situation. Some of those communities, for example, the Asheville-Buncombe community has already gone through this to some extent. Now, their concerns, their community is different than Person County. I think a lot of people up there were very excited to hear that coal was going away and other generation sources were being used. And there are other plants, Roxborough and Mayo stand out as being one, proposed for closure sooner than most of the other coal plants, and two, being larger generation sources, and thus more important for Duke's system. So we have a bit of a unique situation here in the magnitude of the issues and the acuteness of the impact to the local community. So your comments well taken, and we look forward to working together. It'll be a months-long journey, maybe longer, but we'll get through it together, and glad to have the opportunity to work with you.
Quick question, what's the big driver, wind, solar, or nuclear? What's the biggest driver for the change, or hydro?
Oh, well, primarily the driver is environmental concerns.
Right.
But when you think about replacement generation, it has different characteristics in meeting Duke's needs. So, like I said earlier, solar and wind only produce power when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. Now, emerging technologies offer opportunities to change that. I'm talking mainly about battery storage. Those technologies remain very expensive. So when Duke builds out that portfolio that we were looking at, it takes all of these things into consideration. The fact that if I'm the Duke engineer in charge of meeting demand, I can't tell you that 365 days from today will be a sunny day. So I cannot count on solar assets to produce power on a specific day out into the future because I can't predict the weather.
Right.
But we do know over the aggregate in the long term, solar does offer some opportunities. It's capital intensive on the front end, but virtually free to run along the way. So it's a different nature of the power supply. The economics are a little different. And then you have some problems to work around in the way of the intermittent nature of the generation. And as battery storage develops as a technology, it'll be a complementary technology with storage where you could see solar facilities actually producing power during the day, storing it, and then putting it on the system at night. So it's a very dynamic and complex situation as it stands today. But Duke sees some opportunities for solar to play a role in meeting this mandate. And Duke sees opportunities for offshore wind. They have just recently won a large bidding process with rights to build offshore wind in the bay south of kind of the Wilmington area, sort of overlaps with North Carolina and South Carolina, that offshore wind area. So they see these opportunities. Clearly, it brings challenges. How do you get the power from offshore into a Wilmington or a Raleigh or a Durham where there's a lot of demand? That's a challenge. All of these different power sources come with different challenges. But gas stands out as a real opportunity because it's a low carbon emitting power source. And that's what the General Assembly has called for, regulating carbon emissions. So as you saw in that portfolio, there's going to be a movement toward more nuclear as an emissions-free power, more gas as a carbon-free power, more solar, more wind, more hydro as emissions-free
Well,
power.
but when you talk about, I guess, the environmental concerns, nobody talks about the environmental concerns when you have to mine for the things, the copper, the zinc, the lead, the things that the environmentalists don't want us mining for, but you have to mine for those things to make solar, to make wind. I think we're just trading environmental concerns, and no one's talking about that part of the environmental concern when they're talking about, I mean, just to say, for an example, Stephen Moore, he's an economic professional. He says to run Manhattan on solar, you'd have to cover the entire state of Connecticut with solar panels. Whoa, and that doesn't make any sense. And so I'm just wondering what the big drive is for solar and wind when it looks like we need to be going in a more economic, less volatile environmental approach to gas and nuclear and hydro and what, cold fusion? Is that?
Yeah. Well, your point.
Just curious, are they looking at that part of the environmental impact? They're saying coal is terrible, but are they looking at the environmental impact that's just as bad with mining as the other stuff?
Yeah, your point is well taken, and I think really highlights that this is complex. There's no easy answers. So it goes on the natural gas side. You know, we talked about wholesale natural gas supply. You can't use gas at a power plant if you can't get it to the power plant. So all of these, and likewise with coal, there's mining activities that happen. With nuclear, there's concerns about where you store the waste product. So there are no easy answers in this. Every power source brings its own unique environmental impacts, its economic concerns, its unique features in the type of power it produces. You know, a nuclear plant is very steady and always on. There are gas plants that only run a few hundred hours of the year because they're there to meet the big power. So as Duke builds out this power portfolio and the Utilities Commission considers its options, there is a lot of those factors to weigh, Commissioner. You were exactly on point.
Further questions, comments? Thank you, sir. I look forward to working with you. Item number 11 on the agenda is the added item, an offer to purchase and contract access and utility easement. Commissioner Gentry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have a proposal, an abstract agenda here to convert the county farm into a park. And so in order to do so, the land is landlocked and we needed an easement to the property. We have a property owner that has agreed to grant us an easement. We have a purchase contract here for that easement agreement with Mr. Ronald Tilley. Purchase agreement is, here it is. And this is for a purchase price of the easement of $75,000. And I'm trying to think, where is the exact? Let's see the addendum. Is that where you've got the? You don't have the actual acreage broken down here, but we've got the easement interest conveyed here, 50 feet of width across a parcel of land described and owned by Ronald Tilley, which provides access from a parcel currently owned by the Person County, which we call the county farm, also known as Morris Mill Road. Specifically, easement will begin 2,000 feet north of the intersection of State Road 737 and State Road 1738 on E. Burton Road and extend along and beyond the existing farm road. So basically 85,000 square feet or approximately 1.95 acres in size. Granted easement for perpetual access for the park to become a mountain bike hiking park trail with, I believe that we'll go into more detail when we go into public hearing on this, but it will have fencing around the entire perimeter of the park to protect the park area. And there'll be 100-foot riparian buffer protecting the waterfront from access, either coming or going to from across the waterway. And I'd like to make a motion. We have the contract. The offer was agreed to and signed by Mr. Tilley and the chairman. The only thing that needed updating was the exhibit with some additional information that was provided there that was agreed on between the county and Mr. Tilley. So I'd like to make a motion that we grant the chairman the authority to finalize and fully execute the contract.
Have a motion on the floor. Other discussion?
The funding will come from the county stormwater fund, so it's not actually coming out of your general fund.
Other questions? All in favor of the, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Oh.
I'm clear of the throat.
Well, didn't want to miss you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
Chairman of Commissioners, what happens now is in accordance with the conditions that are set out in the offer purchase and contract. It's a binding contract once the chairman signs it with the authority. Those conditions authorize us to have access to the property for survey, technical studies, or anything else we need to do to complete the acquisition of the easement interest, and then get on with constructing the roadway to provide access to the county-owned property.
Okay. All right. Closed session. We ready? Well, we've done it both ways now. Which you want to go through your reports and then close session, or do closed session now? Look at the reports. All right with me. I think I've said enough for today. I don't have additional comments. Manager York.
I'd like to remind you that I have Mr. Ralph Clark joining me this afternoon. He'll be shadowing me this week. And I wanted to also let you know that the job posting has been posted through the consultant's website. I saw it this morning. So moving forward, very good. Thank you again, and thank you for the recognition today. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Sims.
I have no report.
Commissioner Palmer.
I think we made some great selections today on the committee boards. As usual, I like to recognize our county employees from the bottom to the top. With this COLA increase towards their survivability, I think it's going to help all departments, all employees. I'm excited for them. And I think it was a great meeting.
Commissioner Gentry.
Yeah, I had something that I came across and I wanted to kind of bring this to the manager's attention if she hadn't noticed it. I guess it was a week ago, the Senate Bill 372 Electrical Building Code was passed, and it affects electrical contracting, licensing, water waste treatment issues, building code rules and local inspection departments One of them, capping the total number of hours required to get an electrical contracting license, reducing the time frame when a treated wastewater system has to file a performance bond with the Department of Environmental Quality, loosening the requirements for the local health department to conduct a grouting inspection for a private water well if the well contractor provides certification that the grouting complies with state law. Also requiring local governments to designate an individual to oversee the enforcement of planning and development inspections. Additionally, local governments would be required to publish annual financial reports on how it uses fees assessed from development and building maintenance permit fees. Are you aware about all? So I'm just,
Thank you.
this bill passed the House last Thursday and it's going back to the Senate for concurrence. So I don't know how that's going to affect us.
Thanks. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Mr. Perrier.
Thank you, Heidi, for
My pleasure.
the past many years of working with you and enjoyed working with you. And again, just want to repeat to wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We need to go into closed session. Closed session number one, a motion to enter into closed session per general statute 143, 318, 11A3 for the purpose to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is thereby acknowledged. The following individuals are permitted to attend: County Manager Heidi York, Clerk to the Board Brenda Reeves, County Attorney Ellis Hampkins, Economic Development Director Sherry Wilborn, Retained Attorney Patrick Buffkin, and Retained Consultant Kevin O'Donnell, who will join us via phone, if that's right. We have a motion to go into closed session this time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we'll need about 5 minutes to get everybody set up.